So this video is much more of a lecture video than what my content normally is. This is kind of a me salvaging the remnants of a scrapped project that I was going to do originally. This was not going to be just a standalone video on YouTube. It was going to be part of something bigger, but I figured what I would do is I would salvage this. So what this is going to be is this is a bit of a lecture, a kind of mini lecture on taking the basics of theurgic practice and how you begin to develop it, and you start out from the bare minimum of what you need for what I consider the bare minimum of theurgic practice, all the way up to adepthood and ending with the KNC of the HGA. I don't tell you all of the things, but this is generally speaking a roadmap of how to develop these things with more instructional guides than what I normally have here on the channel. I have about 4 more of these that I could theoretically do minimum, so if that is something that sounds interesting to you, this series is going to live or die based on the support I see it get, so if it doesn't get support, it's DOA. If you like this video, leave a comment and share this out with everyone you think might enjoy, and if you really like this video, subscribe and support me over on Patreon. Thank you to all my lovely patrons who continue to support my channel and allow me to make this content. Thank you all. And if you are already supporting me on Patreon, you have my thanks for your continued and ongoing support. So, to future Dave explaining the basics of theurgy. Okay, so, hello, as I said in the intro, this is a bit of an experimental video. What this is I have a slideshow here of a practicing magician's approach to the different levels of theurgy. Now, theurgy is going to be different from a lot of other things. I'm kind of taking theurgy to mean all of these spiritual development and spirit working practices. This is going to be contrasting thaumaturgy, which is a subject for a completely different video. So what is theurgy? Theurgy is one of the 2 primary forms of magic, the second being thaumaturgy. Thaumaturgy translates roughly to miracle working and is in modern day typically associated with manifestation styles of practicing. Theurgy, on the other hand, is divine magic and is associated with communicating with spirits and ideally the divine itself. Notable theurgic practices are going to be your evocationary practices, the Abramelin ritual, invoking celestial forces, and the Ars Notoria, to give a strictly grimoire example. Now, theurgy is going to be very much focused on spiritually developing yourself. If thaumaturgy is changing the world outside of you, theurgy is changing the world inside of you to be more in line with the divine. Why do we do theurgy? You don't have a choice. Theurgy is not optional if you're an occultist. If you do thaumaturgy, you will eventually be forced to do theurgy. Theurgy teaches you that there is more to life than the 3 reasons people get into the occult, which are money, power, and love, which I have listed here. Theurgy is ultimately developing your relationship with the divine, typically leading to spiritual development. Not always, but usually leading to spiritual development. Sometimes people develop, kind of spiritual deficits in a way because the divine traumatizes. Sometimes the divine goes a little bit too far in its lessons. But when it comes to theurgy, if you do, this is where you see a bunch of left-hand path people get really into magic, and they get really into magic for manifesting money, power, and love. And then eventually they get to the point where it's like, man, there's got to be more to this magic thing than just money, power, and love. Like, I've manifested so much money, I'm living not even just comfortably, I'm excessively happy in my material world, but I feel empty and hollow. Theurgy is the thing that causes you to develop spiritually, and this is where you end up learning the basic things of there is more to life than just money and bitches. So, step 1. Before you even start trying to meditate, you're going to want to remove distractions. If you don't already have a meditation practice, this is for those people. You want to begin by turning off all of your electronics and setting an alarm for 20 minutes. Most people are going to have problems with this in my experience. Most people, if you are, I'm not even 30 yet, I have problems with this sometimes, and usually when I have to kick back my meditation practice whenever I've been on hiatus, even if I'm just like taking a month off from hardcore spiritual matters, meditation is a sticking point for me, and this is what I have to do. So what you are going to want to do is you are going to want to put all of your devices on mute. You are going to take off your headphones, and you're not even going to meditate. You are just going to sit there in a chair for 20 minutes. And the reason why you're going to do this is because we in the modern era are addicted to stimulus. We have a stimulus addiction. Our brains, when we are trying to meditate, the reason you have a lot of issues meditating, in my experience, so if you're like me, this should apply to you, is because I just want to doom scroll on my phone instead of actually doing the important work of meditating. Okay, so when I am trying to meditate, my brain is going, but my phone is right there and I could be doing anything else. And this is why you are spending 20 minutes and you're effectively putting yourself in time out in order to not have to deal with these issues. You are going ahead and you are just putting yourself in timeout. You are you're not even meditating. For the first like couple days you do this, you are trying to break the habit of always needing to be, entertained effectively. You are breaking the habit of I need to be doing a thing. If I'm not, it's really is the mental equivalent of drinking like 2 liters a day. The 2 liters a day issue probably is, a bit much for most people. Hopefully it's a bit much for everyone, but this is really breaking your mind's habit of that. Social media really is the over-sugared soda of the modern day for ideas, and so this is where you are breaking that habit. This practice should help alleviate your resistance to wanting to meditate in the first place, because meditation is more interesting than just sitting in a chair, right? We do this on a mundane level. Meditation is sitting alone with your thoughts. On a strictly mundane level, meditation, if you are I am an unspiritual person, meditation is just sitting with your thoughts and allowing thoughts to come to you, because your brain naturally hates being bored. Your brain will naturally go ahead and you will try to avoid being bored at every opportunity. There were people who were found in modern day, and it was a study, and what they found was that if given the option to sit in a room alone with their thoughts or press a button that would 100% cause them to be in physical pain due to an electrical shock, a lot of people, mostly men, admittedly, would go ahead and they would press the button in order to not be alone with their thoughts instead of going ahead and just being alone with their thoughts. So we would rather be in pain than we would be bored. We would rather be in pain than we would be bored, and we want to be in some amount of, we need that stimulus mentally. So this is why we want to break that in order to alleviate some of our resistance to meditation in the first place. The most simple form of meditation is just going to be sitting with your eyes closed and ignoring any and all thoughts. This is not resisting thinking. This is a big distinction I want to make between a lot of people who seem to think, oh, well, if you're just meditating, you need to not think at all. That is not meditation. That is forcing yourself to not think. And then you're thinking about not thinking, so it becomes a feedback loop. What this is you take a deep breath and you just allow the thoughts to pass you by. This is in no way going to be you forcing thoughts to not happen. You can't force thoughts to not happen. But what you can do is not acknowledge the thoughts that are happening. This should be done effortlessly as you focus on breathing while thinking during meditation. Isn't an issue. It shouldn't be something you force yourself out of. When you are meditating, ideas will pop up to you. This is part of the appeal of meditation for occultists, because meditation can teach you things and give you a different perspective than if you were just in the moment, super stimulated up and you're panic thinking. So meditation is going to be the practice of allowing things to happen more than it is the practice of not thinking. You are not forcing things, you are stopping to smell the roses. You are taking a moment to really analyze your thoughts rather than you are thinking about something. So, a good way to put this is that there is a way to force yourself to not have any thoughts. But the problem is, if you force it, your brain will cause you to start thinking about not having thoughts, which defeats the purpose of not thinking, because now you're thinking about not thinking, and that is in and of itself an oxymoron. So what you want to do is you want to just take a deep breath. You want to have some kind of rhythmic breathing. The one that I was taught and the one that I typically go to when I'm trying to do a meditation is the fourfold breath that you will see. The fourfold breath is you breathe in for 4 counts, you hold for 4 counts, you breathe out for 4 counts, you hold for 4 counts, you breathe in for 4 counts, you hold for 4 counts, you breathe out for 4 counts, you hold for 4 counts. This is a very simple method. Now, 4 does not have to be 4 seconds. I want to make that very clear. It just needs to be every 4 units of time that you have predetermined. That is where you are going to breathe in, you're going to hold, you're going to breathe out, you're going to hold, and repeat the process. You want to focus on this instead of your thoughts, because you're going to have thoughts come into your mind, and if you just focus on your breathing and you just focus on keeping that rhythm, it's like a metronome and it keeps you meditating. Now, after you have gotten a solid meditation practice, and when I say solid meditation practice, I mean you've been meditating for at least a month consistently. This is not the put your phone away practice. This is the actual let's just relax, let's observe our thoughts. From here, you can now begin to develop your imagination and scrying. This is going to be, you're going to start with some kind of object, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to visualize an object in your mind, and you're going to want to develop that. I like to imagine a coffee cup because when I was beginning to develop my scrying abilities, I was a very big caffeine addict, and so that in and of itself does not help with meditation, but that's a topic for another time. So what I would do is I would visualize a coffee cup. And what I would do is I would start by visualizing a plain coffee cup. I would feel the weight. I would imagine it in my mind. I would imagine, like, is it hot? Is it cold? Like, can I smell any coffee that used to be in here? Is this a used cup that needs to be washed? Or is this a cup with coffee in it? Right? That kind of thing. I would feel those kind of things and I would develop that in my mind. But when I was first starting out, it was basically like importing like a low poly mesh into my mind. Like, when I say that, it's like a 3D modeling term, but really it was an undefined, weightless object that was just kind of there. It wasn't real. It wasn't even real in my mind. It was kind of like a representation of a cup, but it wasn't actually me imagining a cup. Hopefully that'll make sense in the next slides. But from here, we're going to want to develop our internal symbol set. Now, if you are an occultist and you are in the Western ceremonial tradition, this is 9 times out of 10 going to be ceremonial magic based, and this is 9 times out of 10 going to be various different forms of, the tarot, and the symbolism of the tarot, and the astrology, and all of that stuff. When you get that into your own internal symbol set, we can begin scrying. Now, from here, I'm not going to go delve into scrying, but we're going to want to read a short course in scrying by Benjamin Rowe, and work through at least the first 3 chapters. Now, when I say the first 3 chapters, this is going to be, you're going to develop your imagination, you're going to develop the mental palace, and in chapter 3, he mentions that you should be doing pathworking. You're going to want to do at least 3 pathworking meditations for the major arcana of the Fool, the Magician, and the High Priestess. Why these 3? Now, it doesn't have to be these 3, but I think you should do at least 3 The Fool, the Magician, and the High Priestess just so happen to be the first, second, and third cards in the deck. It starts with 0 with the Fool. The first one is the Magician. Second one is the High Priestess. That's why we're doing it. We're doing number 1, 2, 3. Ideally, you want to work through all 22 of the major arcana. You can even work through the minor arcanas if you so desire. You could take a brand new tarot deck and just flip over a card every day and scry that and do a path working to understand the meaning, which when we get to the lecture on divination, that'll also be a part of it. You'll notice that in these, if I continue to do these, there is a lot of overlap between different parts of the occult, and that is by design from, I guess, God or spirits, whatever you want to say, decide to intelligently design this. There is a lot of interdisciplinary practice between these. Now, ideally, you want to path work through all of the major arcana, but these should be done at a bare minimum before attempting to continue with anything more advanced. I am not saying you need to do anything more advanced. I am saying that you can use these. If you are not really drawn to tarot, or you're kind of more of a Norse practitioner, or maybe you just don't like tarot in general, you can try other methods. If you are a fan of geomancy, you can scry the geomantic figures and scry all 16 of those. You can do the Norse runes. It really doesn't matter. What you are doing is you are attempting to scry these particular symbols, and you are trying to learn different meanings of these. Now, in Benjamin Rowe's course in scrying, which I have him listed as Ben Rowe here because didn't fit on the line, in a short course on scrying, you're going to find that he will tell you that if you know the symbols enough, it will present itself as a story. That is what you are going for. You want to be able to experience kind of a story that is telling you more about these figures. So let's cover what we should be able to do here. Now, this might seem like a lot. But I want you to realize that this is to be done over the course of a couple of months. This is not to be done in one shot. You're not supposed to be able to do this in one day. This is the result of, hey, I've been doing this for 3 months, really. Let's see what's going on here. At this stage, you should be able to meditate for 10 minutes uninterrupted. You should be able to meditate on a topic or question and have information come to you. Now, I didn't mention this in the meditation section. What you're going to want to be able to do is you're going to want to allow meditation to have information coming to you. This is a big part of why I personally think meditation is so important, because we are pro divination on this channel. You want to be able to meditate in such a way that you are going to be able to have ideas and concepts flow into your mind without you having thought of them. Okay? Now, when it comes to your imagination, I have ripped a image off of the internet, and this is showing different levels of aphantasia. So aphantasia runs on a spectrum from 1 to 5. If you have level 5 aphantasia, you cannot imagine anything at all. These are the people who have no internal dialogue, and honestly, I don't understand how they see the world. I don't want to understand how they see the world. It scares me, and quite frankly, it is so alien to me, it is confusing. But when you begin to imagine things, if you are like me and you grew up in the West, you should start with a 4. This is what I mean when I say the low poly mesh of your imagination. This is where it's more of a flat representation. Then you can get some detail in. That's where we get number 3. When you are doing this, you want to be at least a level 3. Ideally, you want to be a level 1. We will compromise and say that level 2 is the goalpost. Level 2 is the goal. When you attempt to scry, you should have images flowing into your mind to where you can gain information from them. This is called active imagination. When you are scrying, you are having an active imagination, and you are actively imagining things independent of you. You should not be forcing your imagination to give you these stories. The stories should just show up. So if you go ahead and you scry the Fool card, you should be experiencing something related to the Fool going on the Fool's journey. Maybe you even scry the entire maybe you scry the entirety of the major arcana in that one Fool's journey, and then you scry the rest of the cards in order to get a deeper, complex meaning about those particular cards. But what you should not have happen is some random nonsense, which is where we get to the final point. You should have experienced at least 3 scrying experiments of the major arcana and had experiments that make sense based on those cards. So, if you go ahead and you scry the Magician, and you see the Magician going ahead, quitting, and just kind of working at a shoe factory for some ungodly reason, that would tell you that, 1, your scry was way off base if you were trying to learn about the Magician card. 2, you have some internal obstacles or resentments or whatever you want to call it towards the Magician card. You don't like the Magician card for whatever reason. It is entirely up to you. But if you are having the Magician card start manifesting things, and maybe you end up having the manifestation of the Magician card goes out into the world and he sees these people and he uses magic to help them. And then he ends up getting a book from some guy. And this book ends up teaching him how to do wondrous things like speak with animals and all of this stuff. And then at the end of that story, he ends up learning that the book was a problem and that he needs to rein in what he's using magic for, and then he wakes up. You accidentally just scried a story from the Book of Thoth, if I remember correctly. So this is where we want to go. Ideally, we want our scrying and meditation to kind of boil over into divination a little bit. They should not be telling us things we already know. They should be telling us things we don't already know. And that is the advantage of doing these practices. So these should be coming up with ideas that you haven't thought up or make sense and are compatible with what you are trying to scry. For example, the Magician card is all about magic for people's benefits. And then if he makes a deal with the Devil card, the Devil card, if you're scrying the Devil card, and the Devil card talks to the Magician into doing something evil, right? That's a Faustian bargain. You're learning more about the Devil card, and you're learning more about that. But if the Devil starts giving the Magician things, and then it just kind of works out, and then ultimately everyone except for the Devil is happy, that's not really what you should be going with. So yeah, that's not really what you should be seeing. You should be seeing things that would make sense based on the cards. This is where you would want to read up different tarot meanings. But I digress. The basics of invocation. Okay, once you have begun developing scrying, and honestly, you could do this beforehand, but I'm putting it here because you want to do this after you can actually hear and communicate with forces. So this is where you should be able to feel spiritual energies after you do energy work, which I don't mention energy work, but that's an important part of this. You will be able to invoke spiritual forces and actually communicate with them. This is why it's after scrying. Before this, you can't really communicate with them, but after this, because spirits speak through your imagination, you will be able to actually hear them, and your conscious mind will cause you to mishear them or hear what you want to hear. I call this autofill. So when you are talking to a spirit, if the Archangel Michael says, "Oh yeah, you're doing a great job, you're the best, you absolutely best," the Archangel Michael isn't going to tell you that. If you go into a conversation kind of dreading what the spirit is going to say, and then the spirit goes, "Oh yeah, here's all of the stuff you wanted to hear," and then you come out of the experience "Wow, that was so great, I'm so amazing." Yeah, no, usually a spirit is not going to do that, especially if you're kind of nervous because you know they're going to tell you the exact opposite of what you want to hear. The difference between invocation and evocation. Now, I am going to tell you this. I mark a difference between invocation and evocation. Invocation is calling the forces into your circle. Evocation is calling things to be outside of your circle. This is a fairly modern distinction and was not actually used in the old grimoires. I am making this distinction because invocation should be in your circle. Evocation is out of your circle, right? Invocation has the word in the word, right? Now, I will admit that this is not a pure one-to-one everything. This is not a one-size-fits-all, but in general, we are going to invoke beneficial forces. This is going to be angels, helpful, beneficial gods, and we are going to evoke hostile forces, such as demons. More on that later. However, I want to mention something. Hostile should not be hostile. When I wrote this, I was thinking in terms of demons, but thinking back on it now, that should be harmful forces. Because if you are practicing some form of necromancy, speaking with ancestor spirits, the ancestor spirits are the beloved dead. But they are still passed on to the next world, so we don't want them in our circle, because if you are around spirits of the dead for too long, you start taking on the emotional complexity of dead spirits. And that is kind of apathy, because the spirits of the dead know that all problems will be solved. Now, it might take them dying in order to solve them, but they will be solved eventually. Invocationary theory. There are two types of invocation in modern ceremonial magic current. These are the primary ones you're going to begin by learning. Elemental invocations. These are invoking one of the four. I have 5 and 6 there for spirit active and spirit passive if you're in the Golden Dawn tradition, because technically spirit active and spirit passive are 1, but they work as 2, so that's why it's kind of messy. But there's only 4 classical elements that don't cause me to have a headache, so we're going to say 4 classical elements for the remainder of this. You're going to be invoking them into your space, and this is where the force and power of these elements is going to be used at your disposal. You're going to want to meditate on these, because these are the fundamental building blocks of the universe, according to the ancients and according to metaphysics. The four different classical elements represent fire, air, water, and earth, and they're going to represent, in very, very esoteric terms, energy and movement, mental action and creativity, emotions and psychic phenomenon, and the terrestrial world we live in, with spirit being both the balance of them and spirit is the balance of all 4 of these. You're going to want to work on these, and you're going to find that you are going to be more drawn to specific elementals than others. You should at least engage with these at some point. Now, I am going to say that elemental magic is very simple when it comes down to it, and the elemental forces, one of the practices you can do that ties into the pathworking I mentioned is scrying the elemental tattvas of the Golden Dawn. These will take you to the elemental planes of the particular elements, and you will be able to engage with the elemental spirits in their home plane. I find personally that if you are going to try to talk to the elemental spirits, this is their preferred method. This is not necessarily the magician's preferred method, but if you want to go to the elemental plane of Earth and you scry the elemental tattva, you can go meet Gary the Gnome there, and Gary the Gnome will help you out, and he will teach you various different kinds of earth magic, or he will tell you what your problem with what the problem with your relationship with the element of earth is. Same with the other spirits of the different elements. There is more complexity to the elemental tattvas and the elemental planes than what I am describing here, but I just wanted to mention that right now. Planetary invocations are a little bit similar but different. So the difference between the elemental invocations is that, according to metaphysics and according to the Hermetic Kabbalistic tradition, all of the different 4 classical elements are right here in the elemental plane of Earth. In the realm of Earth. We are in the mundane physical world. The mundane physical world is made up of all 4 of these different elements. Therefore, you're going to end up having those 4 elements in the physical world. Movement is considered to be the element of fire. Okay? And so, when we do planetary invocations, we're not invoking things that are already here. We are invoking the 7 traditional planetary forces of astrology. The 7 different planetary forces of astrology are going to be the 7 different planetaries, quote, quote, that were visible to the naked eye when the Greeks and all of the different astrologers were writing. This is going to be the sun and the moon, which are called the luminaries, Mercury, which is the lowest and is not part of any group, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. Not necessarily in that order. Now, these are going to be the 7 different planetaries of astrology, and they're all going to be in an order called the Chaldean order. This is basically just the Greek order. And the order is from what they believe to be the most outer planet to the most inner planet closest to the Earth. So that is going to be Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, the Moon. And when it comes down to it, these are going to be the most important to an internal world to external world. There is a lot going on here with these, and I would highly recommend you go ahead and do your own meditations on these practices in order to discover the differences in them, as well as reading different books, because this topic is so dense that I have Patreon exclusive write-ups about all of the planets coming or already published. So, each of these must be banished after your ritual is complete for different reasons. Now, I want to stress this. When you are going through and when you are doing invocations, you are going to want to do elemental invocations for the basic building blocks. But what if you want to say, maybe you have a more complex situation? Well, for that, you're going to want to do a planetary invocation. Maybe you want to learn how to do money. Well, an elemental gnome is going to teach you how to be very good with money, but it's not really going to teach you how to make your business thrive. That would be more of a Jupiterian thing, right? And at this point, it should be noted that I'm talking about these in terms of what they can get you instead of your relationship with the divine. The way that you're going to improve your relationship with these and your relationship with the divine is called remediation. So if you notice that you're really, really anti, like the element of water, for example, crazy thing that I've talked about on this channel, what you can do is you can do more magic with the element of water. Maybe scry the elemental plane of water, talk to the water spirits, and then they can tell you, hey, you have emotional blockages because of X, Y, and Z. These are why you have problems with the element of water that you need to work through. This is called elemental remediation. Planetary remediation is going to be much more common and is going to be much more comprehensive. Planetary remediation is going to be it's going to be performing activities related to the planetary powers. So, if you have problems with the planetary power of Mars, for example, you really just don't like the planetary power of Mars, what you can do is you can start working out, and that is considered a martial activity. If you're really having issues with the planetary power of Saturn, you invoke the planetary power of Saturn, and you've got like panic and anxiety. This is where you can work with the planetary power of Saturn. Organize things, schedule yourself, make it so that you have an organized list of things that you are going to do, and all of those things. So, that is very important, I find. Now, this is going to be where you are remediating these. However, after each ritual you work with these planets and the elementals in, you must banish. Each of these must be banished after your ritual is complete for different reasons. Now, when I say different reasons, let me break down why. If you invoke the element of fire and you don't banish it, the elementals of fire have one goal in mind, and that is improve the amount of increase the amount of their element wherever they are. They are in the elemental plane of fire a majority of the time, and the elemental plane of fire is pure fire. In the elemental plane of water, the element is basically all water, or you can't go anywhere without seeing the ocean, for God's sakes. Same thing with the element of air, same thing with the element of earth. If you go ahead and you invoke the element of earth into your ritual space and then you don't banish it, well, when you close down your circle, the elementals are going to get loose, and they're going to want to improve the amount, or they're going to want to increase the amount of their element in their surroundings, which is now your home. So you're going to experience a lot more random dirt coming in, right? I've heard people have leaky pipes from random water elementals, or drafts suddenly in their brand new windows from air elementals. It really can run the gambit, and I don't really think that fire elementals are something that you should be invoking, particularly if you don't plan on banishing. If you don't plan on banishing fire elementals, you have a problem. But there is an old horror story of some magician ended up, doing some rituals in their house, and then some family moved in, and there was a rogue fire elemental. But in order to appease the fire elemental that he couldn't get out of his house, what he ended up doing was he just kept burning candles, and the new family didn't, and then their home burned down, and there was like a fiery fit, like there was a person in the flames that was like laughing and jumping around, and then they were kind of upset, and then like there was forest fires in that area. That's an old story. It just kind of goes to prove, once again, don't invoke if you don't plan on banishing. Planetary invocations you need to banish for a different reason though. So the elemental invocations will just kind of cause the elementals to try to increase the amount of their element in your location. They'll also decay into like their worst aspects, which is a whole nother topic. But the planetary invocations, if you don't banish the planetaries, they will automatically invoke their opposites, usually in an uncontrolled and negative manner. Recently on the Discord, somebody mentioned that they were using they were doing a massive ritual to Jupiter, but they had not banished Jupiter properly. And what ended up happening was that they were having issues with travel, and there was a bunch of travel delays, and there was a bunch of miscommunication errors. Well, what I mentioned to them was, well, it sounds like you're having a bunch of problems where Mercury and Saturn are being invoked into your ritual space. Also Mars, thinking about it. Yeah, Mercury, Jupiter, and Mars, which are all the opposite planets, the planets that have the easiest time opposing Jupiter into your ritual space. This is because the more you invoke a planetary, the planetaries are not supposed to be here. We have things in the material world representing the planetaries, but we don't actually have the actual planetaries themselves. So what is going to happen is you're going to invoke a planetary force, you're going to invoke the planetary force of Jupiter, and it is going to, because you didn't banish it, it is going to pull its opposite in order to balance out your environment. So when you banish, or when you invoke, you must banish by necessity. From here, you can get into once you have developed a healthy invocation practice, you can work on evocation, beginning with the initiatory spirits of your particular practice. The spirits I recommend beginning with are going to be the Archangel Michael, or any of the archangels listed in the Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram. Honestly, I prefer Michael because the 7 penitential psalms is a well-attested method of evoking the Archangel Michael. It is given to us by Michael from the Dr. John Dee, which is where we get the Enochian system from, so that in and of itself should be a gold standard. The second spirit I'm going to recommend for the more witchy among my audience is going to be the Greek goddess Hecate. Hecate has a lot of different incarnations. This is a goddess that I have personally worked with. I don't necessarily have the best relationship with her, but my relationship with Hecate is always fun to explain, and I always have great stories whenever Hecate shows up, because usually the stories start with, oh god, what do you want now? Hecate is great. I have nothing but praise for the goddess Hecate. She is an absolute wonderful spirit to work with. The third one is going to be actually a collection of spirits. This is going to be the Olympic planetary spirits from the Arbitel of Magick. These are the simplest spirits to evoke. They are actually so easy to evoke, modern practitioners will go ahead and they will overcomplicate the ritual to get the Olympic planetary spirits to show up in manifestation. The Olympic planetary spirits are super easy to evoke, highly recommend. Now, for anyone who is not part of the ceremonial magic tradition, I mentioned Norse spirits before. The final recommendation is whatever the particular crossroads and doors spirit of your tradition is. Now, this is going to be different for every tradition. I don't know any of them. A good example is going to be, Hecate is going to be the crossroads spirit of the Greek pantheon, but I believe Papa Legba is the Loa of crossroads and doors, so he's kind of the initiator spirit in ATR, in different ATRs. I don't know much about that tradition. I don't fuck with that tradition. It's not my wheelhouse, not my expertise, but different spirits of different crossroads and doors are going to be in every tradition. So you're going to want to work with whoever those are. Thinking about it, Janus would always be would be another good one. But yeah, you're going to want to figure out what that particular spirit is and what that particular energy that you are trying to learn from is. Now, from here, this is going to be a kind of generic theurgy roadmap that kind of summarizes everything that we've just been through. Step 1, you're going to want to get good at meditation and visualization. This is not negotiable. You need to get good at meditation and visualization. These are the stepping stones in order to get good at theurgy, because you are going to get your divine revelation through meditation, and visualization is going to allow you to get more complex spiritual revelations. Step 2, get good at scrying and path working through the major arcana. Doesn't need to be the major arcana, but you need to be good at scrying and path working, because these are going to show these spirits that you have an active imagination, and they are going to be able to provide you with more interesting examples and understandable dialogue with the spirits. 3, you're going to want to learn to invoke both the elemental forces as well as the 7 traditional planets. Honestly, this is particularly for the ceremonial, like the Hermetic ceremonial magician style that I have on my channel with my Golden Dawn style flavored explanations. Again, not really a Golden Dawn practitioner at this point, but I am still a ceremonial hermetic magician. So this is where this is why I am saying you should learn to invoke, because then you can learn how to call up some lesser spirits. This is really step 3, is learning how to call up lesser spirits. Step 4 is going to be evoke at least one spirit to guide you on what the right direction is in terms of your spiritual goals and how to develop spiritually. This is the reason I recommend to evoke the Archangel Michael. This is because the Archangel Michael, if you work with angels, is going to be the spirit who is the most like God. And if you are asking the one who is like God how you can develop and become closer to God, that's probably like the second best thing beyond asking God himself, which is why I recommend it. Step 5 is going to be, so from step 4, that is kind of what we have covered here. Step 5 and below, from here, you honestly don't need my advice. Step 5 is going to be God forms work and a devotional practice. At this point, you need to believe in something. Whatever it is, you can believe that magic comes from the universe itself, and honestly, according to the Hermetic monad theory, that's not entirely wrong. This is where you can start working with the God forms of particular spirits. This is kind of more advanced invocation, but it's more, God forms are more advanced invocation, I would say. And devotional practice. Devotional practice is where you're going to repeatedly work on your relationships with particular spirits and particular gods and particular angels even, and the divine itself. This is where we are starting to get more divine with our practice. Step 6 is going to be the knowledge and conversation or equivalent of your tradition. Honestly, you can go for the Agathos diamond if you're more of a Greek persuasion, but the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, at some point you're going to want a personal tutor spirit. This is the equivalent. If you believe in the angel, if you work with angels, the knowledge and conversation of your Holy Guardian Angel is going to be the equivalent of your personal tutor spirit, because that is taking an aspect of the divine. The angels are all aspects of the divine. They're more divine than we are, at least. They're closer to God. They're angels. Angels are supposed to be messengers of the divine, so it's a whole thing. Once you get that knowledge and conversation of your tradition, you are going to end up being at a supreme advantage, or the equivalent. If you get your Agathos diamond, which is your good daemon, this is going to be the good spirit of you. They're basically fulfilling the same role. Different traditions have this. Every single tradition seems to have some kind of variant of this. You're going to want to, at some point, get in contact with that spirit based on your tradition. And step 7 is do whatever your HGA tells you, honestly. Just because you have the HGA doesn't mean you have to listen to it, but I'm not going to lie to you, if you go through the Abramelin, and you go through even the 6-month version, 6 months of putting yourself through a torturous amount of prayer is a long time to waste in order to get a spirit you're just going to ignore. So, that is what I wanted to say. Now, am I leaving things out of this generic roadmap? Yes, absolutely. Most of the people who watch my content know that I talk in broad strokes. On this topic, you have probably noticed that my voice is actually getting faster. That's because I'm glossing over a lot of details, but we have a lot of details and I wanted to get this video out and I wanted to talk about this in broad views. If anyone has any questions, please leave comments. Let me know what you guys think of this video. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Comments, suggestions, thoughts, and if you really enjoyed this video, support me over on Patreon, where, depending on how this video goes, we'll see. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. This was an experimental video of kind of me salvaging a project that I had for a while. So yeah, hopefully everyone is having a good day. If you're not having a good day, hope your day gets better. Take it easy. Take care.